Hey, I'm Axon, and I bid you welcome to the Machinations Community Spotlight. Tell us a few words about yourself.
Hello, Machinations. I'm Daniel Narvaez. I'm currently a fourth year at Parsons School of Design, and I have been a game developer for almost 2 years now. And I first stumbled upon Machinations about a year ago, working on a couple of assignments. Really got into systems thinking. My first exposure to that was with Daniel Narvaez reading about thinking in systems. Um, and so there were a number of things that I wanted to see. I saw a lot of potential for using machinations like in my games because
Yeah,
there's a lot there for systems to see how they interact with one another, what the components are, um, and so it was a tool that I was really excited to use. And my first my first webinar that I attended was actually the one for the Unity plugin as well. And
Aha.
I was like, this is actually pretty cool, and I can see that it sort of just maps over it, and like you can basically make the system directly in machinations.
Yeah, a great
Um,
part of it can be done. Yeah.
Absolutely. Um,
So, what tell us about a few of your games? I'm curious.
oh,
If
for sure.
and anything that is not under NDA.
um, so I've mostly been working on a number of like quick and dirty games that I just want to test the idea, and then I'll watch it break and see, okay, like that's something that didn't work out, but I'm glad that I tried it. But I have two currently on my website that I just launched recently. The website is still a work in progress as I'm still very new to coding in HTML and CSS.
So you're
But
using JavaScript for as a game engine. You use some game engines in JavaScript.
No, actually, I've been using Unity for my games, but for the purpose of getting
Aha.
my website up, I had to learn how to
Okay.
code in other languages.
Yeah. Okay.
But my first game was a platformer that I did alongside one of my classmates. It is a platform game called the Hex Perplex. And our original idea was to make a puzzle platformer where you play as a wizard and you use magic spells to change the terrain and the layout to your advantage.
Aha.
Um, so we stuck with three spells for that. And that was our choice. But then eventually the result came to it being more of an action platformer, where you're mostly fighting enemies instead of clearing puzzles. And the second game that would be located on my website is Clockout, which is an arcade style fighting game that I had just released with a team of 6 people. It's on Android and iOS as well.
Ah,
But
nice.
you play as an unpaid intern who decides one day that they're going to fight all of their bosses and climb the corporate ladder that way.
Like physical fighting against the
Correct.
bosses. Okay.
But in terms of machinations, I've made one game inside the diagram, and that one is called Card Capital.
Yeah, the one I saw. Yeah, yeah.
Correct. Card Capital was my take. I wanted to do something that was sort of critiquing the economy of like card gaming.
Hmm.
I from when I was about 4 years old till about like maybe 12, 13 years, I played Yu-Gi-Oh, Card Fight Vanguard, Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, magic.
And it was Yu-Gi-Oh in particular that I noticed that the game was taking a direction that I wasn't really fond of. And maybe that might have just been like my bias to like what I was seeing on like the anime cartoons and like, the kind of game that I wanted to see. Um,
I don't know that game. Did you know? Did you play Dominion, for example?
Dominion, no, I have not actually.
How does it? Is it a Magic the Gathering type of game where you collect in a deck like I saw in Card Capital, or is it a different?
Yu-Gi-Oh, you collect cards, and then you would use them to battle, like in Magic the Gathering. And of course, there's like the two differences to combat, and like, for example, like in Magic the Gathering, like you have like a mana pool, and you have to play lands, and everything is like restrained to that mana pool.
Mhm.
Whereas Yu-Gi-Oh, because it's more marketed towards children, it seems to have no limits on the number of actions that you can do.
Mhm.
Um, Magic the Gathering, you can play as many units as much mana as you have to expand that turn. Yu-Gi-Oh, you can normal summon one creature, one monster per turn, and then that's your one normal summon. However, you can do what's called a special summon. You can special summon as many times as you want, but because there's no limit to how much you can do, um, with every new release of a set, it seemed like the descriptions on the cards were just getting much more bulkier, and it's like cards had much more freedom. And it felt to me almost as if the developers of this game were sort of handing you like these cool combos and strategies,
Mhm.
which then led into the marketing aspect, is that now you have these cards that are like really powerful and they're really good, and everybody who plays competitively knows how good they are, and so everybody wants those cards, and so the prices go up. And that became very difficult for casual players to enjoy themselves, especially in a tournament setting, is
Yeah.
because it became less of who has the smartest strategy versus who has the most viable and like basically the most expensive deck.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, many of these games get into that. That's one of my gripes actually with Magic the Gathering, and why I personally have played quite a lot of Dominion. In Dominion, you don't really have that. It's a game, it has a number of cards. They don't release new cards. They release an expansion set every now and then. But when you play Dominion, everybody plays on the same cards. So it's not like you come with your cards and you mix them in the deck. It's a different. They're very different in this kind of way. But
I
there's
see.
two. It's kind of two different families of two different families of deck building games that are quite different. So tell us a bit about Card Capital.
Absolutely.
Would you like to share your screen?
Absolutely. Um, Let me do that right now, actually. Oh, I need permission for screen sharing.
Oh, okay. Okay, now you should have it.
Okay, perfect.
Happens every time on Zoom.
It's all right. Okay, so
Yeah, it's
this
working. Cool.
this oh, what happened there? So this is basically my diagram for my best attempt at replicating the card gaming economy. Um, so I guess I can start us at the very beginning. I had two choices for how to basically model this system. It was either map out the system around the map the card prices based on the card's function, which is basically what happens in the real world, where a card has a very good ability, everybody sees that that ability is good, and the price goes up. Or design the system, design the pricing based on the card's rarity, which is a much more rare situation, no pun intended, in the real world, where just because a card is very holographic or very shiny
Mm.
or much harder to pull in a pack does not necessarily mean that it's viable or that it's a good card in combat. Um, so I start out with the player beginning with $60 in their inventory. Basically, they have $60,
Mm.
and over here they have their deck, which consists of 50 common cards. Normally in Yu-Gi-Oh, the standard is to like have a 40 card deck because it increases your chances of drawing what your card is. But I figured to keep faithful abstraction, 50 cards would give the player in this diagram a little bit more leg room. Okay, so when you
I
start
really
the
like how
system,
you separated everything in colors. Like that's the rarity, right?
correct. So over here, this is the inventory of cards where you have common. Let me move that right there. You have a common card, rare cards, super rare, ultra rare, and mega rare.
Yeah, nice.
And then you can, when you start the system, you buy your pack. Oh wait, I have it set to 5 seconds. There we go.
Mhm.
So you get one pack, and now that pack is in your inventory, and then you can open up that pack. And so the way that Yu-Gi-Oh packs used to be set up is that you would get 9 cards in a pack. One of them was guaranteed to be a rare card. 7 of them were guaranteed to be a common card. And then the ninth card could either be another common or one of the additional rares.
Yeah.
Um, about about 15 minutes ago, I actually did notice a glitch, and I'm hoping that it does not happen here. But
A glitch in a demo, it never happens like that.
absolutely, it has been a while since I've opened this up. But over here, this little eating food, I consider it to be a part of the system as well, because when you're playing tournaments, they tend to go on for very long, and so most of your money tends to go into eating food as well.
That's a good. You went a bit macro there with the economy as
Right.
well.
Because I couldn't replicate like the rarity of function. I thought, what are some other aspects of this system that we don't really tend to think about that are actually part of it? So if I go ahead and open up another pack,
Then you
there's
could.
that glitch right there. Yeah. You were gonna say something?
Yeah, I would say I want to say that if you go for macro, then you can also factor in the company's sales with this game, and if they don't have enough sales, then they're gonna jack up the prices for the rarity, or gonna boost, or they're gonna make even more powerful set of types of cards.
Actually, that's a pretty cool idea. Um, if I were to further iterate on this, I was thinking of turning this into like an idle game, and there would be like some sort of external source that would be messing with the prices of the cards. But over here, that glitch just happened where I got 5 super rares from one pack, which is
Hmm.
actually supposed to be just one. But
Hmm.
I'll draw your attention over here where when you're in a tournament setting, there's other people there, and they've always got like their own binders of cards that they want to trade or that they want to sell. Usually you trade them evenly, or you would buy for them with actual cash. And then they would usually take the market price. So right here, I have these very static market prices for like what a mega rare is. A mega rare would cost like $150, and an ultra rare would be there. But I have $36, and I have one super rare, or I
Question.
can. Mhm.
One question. When you have the vendor prices, are these did you set them right now as arbitrary, or would you have like maybe a dice to fluctuate the market?
I set them as arbitrary values for the sake of this diagram.
Yeah.
Back then, it didn't occur to me that I could actually make these fluctuate over time.
Yeah, I'm just coming up with some ideas that just when they strike me when you talk about the diagram.
Right.
I
Because I
see
only
the I
have
see this mostly like
32.
we're brainstorming and looking at the design. I really love doing that. So
Yeah, thank you for the input, though. These are all really helpful ideas. Um, so I have $32, so I can't really buy a super rare right now because then I'll run out of money the next time I have to eat food. And so I'm thinking that I'm gonna sell some of the super rares to get some more money. Um, and another thing is, now that I have these 2 rare cards and this one super rare card, I'm gonna go ahead and remove 3 commons from the deck, and then go ahead and add the 2 rares to my deck and the super rare. And the purpose of doing this would be based on your card rarities inside of your deck. It increases the probability that you have for winning each round of a tournament that you choose to enter into. So right now,
uh-huh.
because I've added these two rare cards and this one super rare card, we can see that it's increased my chances by like 0.008% of winning.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So you get, if you successfully win the tournament, you get $200 more and you get 7 packs, which is a typical arbitrary award
Mhm.
for winning a tournament. Usually you'd get store credit if it was like a locals, or if it was a regionals, you'd probably get an invitation to
Yeah.
nationals.
Yeah.
Some other things that I considered were the typical thieves that you hopefully don't encounter during your trips to a local card shop. Um,
Okay, so that's actual thieves that you meant there. I was wondering
right,
what's that. I was thinking, okay, is it like game thieves, in-game thieves from some game mechanic, or like actual thieves?
right.
And you
So
mean
the
actual thieves?
probability the probability of your stuff getting stolen is based on how many rare cards that you have. So super rares, ultra rares, and mega rares, based on how many you have in your inventory, the more likely chance that a thief will come and steal your stuff. Um,
Everything is gone. Could be everything.
Correct.
Nice.
Everything would be gone. Some two other small things were like, um, in addition to the vendors that were up here, we also have the people who like to trade. So you can trade based on equal value. So like one mega rare for a super rare and an ultra rare card. And then the other thing would be player matches here. I remember this is the area that I didn't really get to do too much work on, but it would basically have a similar system to the tournament where victory is based on your card rarities, and card rarities influence your probability. If I had more time, I would definitely fully flesh out this part over here, because I feel like player matches are just such a fun part
Mhm.
of the community as well.
Are you going to what were you thinking here when you were doing player matches, to base the deck of both players on the same values that are up there, or to randomize the values a bit so that you can simulate two different decks fighting? You know, rather than duplicating the entire thing, duplicating the entire deck area for each player and then funneling into the players.
Right. For this particular thing right here, I think where I stopped myself was because I wanted it to just be like one input that you would have, and you just click it and it would pick like a random pool of decks, like, that were just ready made for you. And so I think I stopped myself there because it was a little out of scope for the time frame that I gave myself for this project. And
What was the time frame, by the way?
the time frame was about 2 weeks. This was sort of something that I just wanted to put out there
Hmm?
and just see it visually and see what I can do with it later along the line.
You definitely
Um,
put it out there.
right. And now we're here about, I would say, like 10 months later, and I haven't really had a chance until now to look back at it. And I'm thinking there's a lot of potential here, you know?
Yeah, I really think that you've covered quite a lot about how a designer would experiment with their economy on paper, just to see how things would pan out for a typical player and what the actions would be.
Mhm. And there's so many
And
things that you don't consider too, is like, um, if I were to think about this like initially, I would think like, oh, like you have like the packs, you have the the company, then you have the vendors, and that would be it, right? But then like all of these tinier aspects, like eating food, and the thieves and the trades and the player matches, all of those sort of contribute to the same system as well. Um, and in this system, there's like the currency of cards, but then there's also just the actual currency of money. And so I think that really influenced my decision to further expand on the scope of it and see like what's affecting the money and what's affecting the player's inventory of cards in a real world situation.
what do you think that was the most um, valuable insight that you got from this diagram?
Um, for me, I believe the insight was definitely trying to figure out how it was definitely like seeing how many packs you have to buy in order to actually get the cards that you want, which was something that I didn't really think about when I would participate in these tournaments
Mm,
as a teenager. And now looking at this, when I put this out, I was like, I had spent a lot of money on just opening packs trying to get that one card, where I'm pretty sure that if I just bought it for a vendor price, I probably would have saved me some money.
mm,
But that's how the companies get people too. Is just like, obviously they market this pretty well, and they're like, your chances are better if you buy a pack for $3-4, which I
mm.
remember, um, a pack at my local card shop went for 450, which I could never I could never really afford it back then because I didn't really have a job. It was always like my parents were like giving me
Yeah, yeah,
some money.
the pocket money.
Right.
Yeah. And what can you identify one area in the diagram where it really you felt like it's quite challenging to cover it, to design it, and eventually it flows nicely.
The first thing was what you see here was the inventory versus the deck. Because there are so many converters and so many pools, it was very hard for me to first. I think I spent a lot of time just trying to map this out. Was like, there are so many things that you can do with the inventory here. You can either add it
Mm,
to your deck, remove it from the deck, or sell it to a shop. And my first big challenge was, okay, how is this going to look visually? Because there's so many inflows and outflows that it needs to still be readable to
yeah.
whoever's looking at this diagram. Um, and so that was my first challenge here. And the second challenge was figuring out a way to get the tournament function to work in a way that is still faithful to real world situations, but
Mm,
still makes sense, right? Because there are so many things to throw into consideration here, which is like, who gets the first turn, or is it best 2 out of 3, best 3 out of 5? Is it a single match? What kind of decks are the players playing? Because it's like you can be facing the best player in the tournament round
mm,
one,
mm.
and you wouldn't even know it
Yeah,
until you
yeah,
lose,
yeah.
which couldn't be
But
mapped here.
exactly. But that's the thing that you in a diagram you don't need to in a machination you don't need to map all of these things. It's enough to map what you did, enough to get the insights, and enough to start testing. Did you share this with anybody? Did you have discussions or brainstorming around this with colleagues or teachers or other game designers?
Yeah, I shared it with my professor, and he said that like this tournament function was handled in the best way based on the limitations of of
Precisely.
the of the software, because he's also a very big fan of Machinations as well. And
Nice. Nice.
he was like, yeah, I mean, um, there's nothing more that you could have done, but this was a very creative way to handle it, because starting with round one, the probability is a lot more generous than the final round, which is very hard to win.
Precisely. Yeah.
And so when the player loses, you go back to this loop of opening packs and then selling and buying more cards in order to boost your deck's rarity, and then going back into it, and then they give it another shot,
Mm.
which is almost like a real world scenario where it's like, at first you're probably not going to win your first local tournament, um, basically just based on experience. Like, if you don't have that competitive experience under your belt, there's just going to be things that separate you from the pros.
Mm. Maybe you could add some sort of like for a future iteration, add a value that kind of boosts the formulas in the tournament based on a pool, and the pool would be like the player skill level.
Right.
And yeah, the skill level you could set arbitrarily, just put 50 and then everything increases, or
Mhm.
yeah, just something like that.
Right. And then he recommended that I check out this reading. I really wish I still had it actually, but it was a reading by one of the developers or I don't know if it was one of the developers of Magic the Gathering or if it was just a very renowned player. But basically, that person wrote an article about like dissecting the entire market between Wizards of the Coast and Magic the Gathering players. And that was something that actually very that helped me a lot with designing this at first, because I remember I showed him a very dirty build of this diagram before, and then he was like, give this a read and then come back to this and then see the revisions that you can do.
Uh-huh.
um, but I do wish I had that reading, honestly.
Uh-huh. But what is the format of that? Is it like a book or is it the reading?
Oh, the reading was it was an article on a website. So maybe if I give the internet a couple of searches, maybe I'll find it again one day.
Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah, man, it's very. I would say that this is one of the most well. The diagram is very well designed. It's very aesthetic. That's the word I was looking for. One of the most aesthetic diagrams I've seen. Very well organized. Also very easy to read in terms of colors and very useful in terms of mechanics. And I think it's quite people in the community can really learn from all of these layout tricks that you used here. You used like this large texts where you highlight areas, and you thought about very many things with even the thieves. So that's actually quite a cool thing. Okay. Also, one thing I'm curious about is what do you want to what would you like to do with this in the future? So, would you like to actually start designing this game, this sort of system to make a system for this?
I think I would actually. And it was actually the Unity plugin that further encouraged me to try this idea out, was because if I have this system here and I see this mostly working as an idle game, but I'm still not entirely sure about it. It has the components of a gotcha game where you're constantly buying and then you're hoping for like a rare pull. Um, but then there's the aspect of the fluctuating economy that I really want to throw in there, and that might be the atomic twist to it. Um, so the further iteration would I would probably take this to Unity after tweaking the system to my needs, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah, it does. Because for me, this is also like it's also like a game and also the diagram of an entire system, the game ecosystem, the game and the external factors. So you could turn everything into a game, not necessarily like the deck building game, but a game about deck building games.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious what Unity assets were you thinking to use? How do you envision? Do you want to work with a team and actually make cards and things like that, or would you like to go for a simulation kind of thing where you mostly have grids with numbers and values instead of the actual cards?
I think I really want to I would give definitely working a team a try. Like if I can, I also do art on the side.
Ah,
And so initially I was, you know, as every indie dev has probably decided, like they're just like, I'm gonna do this on my own. Like I'll do the art, the coding, etc. Um, but definitely having that helping hand would probably keep my ideas within scope, but also hearing second opinions would definitely help. I think that I would definitely take the route of working with a team on this game should the opportunity ever come.
mhm. And in closing, would you like to share anything with the community? Any kind of wisdom or tips or anything?
For one, save your money in card games. That is a very invaluable that's a very invaluable advice. If you see this, especially on online card games as well, like Hearthstone and Magic
Yeah,
Arena, like if you see those sales,
yeah,
just
totally.
hold on tight to your gems and your extensive your secondary currency.
That's a very
Um,
useful tip.
um, and I guess anything else that I'd like to share is that I did, as I mentioned at the very beginning, I just launched my website. Um, I'm always open to critique and feedback. I'm also open to connecting with anybody on LinkedIn or any other social media like Twitter. I'm also on Twitter as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you to share with me all the links for your website and for the games you've made and the Twitter and everything. Anything that you like to share, we're gonna share ourselves.
Okay. Shall I drop them now, or do you want me to wait until after the meeting?
You can send them after the meeting because right now I also want to ask you some things about your journey. I mean, your experience of using machinations, as in
Mhm.
feedback, bugs, suggestions, questions, things like that.
Yeah.
If you found, like, for example, I just the I saw that the diagram was moving very fast at one point where you were
Mhm.
scrolling through it, things like that. Is that
Right.
anything that you would like to communicate to us?
Yeah, there are a few things. The way that I learned about how to use machinations is that I studied like the handbook. I believe there was like two chapters on it,
Hmm.
and I read through most of it. And also for me, it was a little bit easier because most of the nodes they echo a lot of the diagrams that Danella Meadows had in her books. And so it was easy for me to put two and two together. So I probably can't speak for people who are just getting started with systems mapping and all that stuff. But in terms of like navigating the actual diagrams, I would say that that space bar is something that I take from like other apps like Photoshop or Unity, where like I have this second nature to hold down the space bar and click and drag to pan. The other thing is um, my other habit is that I use the scroll wheel to zoom in, but the scroll wheel literally just scrolls up and down for that. And so it's a little difficult for me to navigate that way as well.
Did you
Um,
use? Are you on a Mac or a PC?
I'm on a PC right now, actually.
Because
Yeah,
on the PC it's control scroll, right?
control scroll.
Yeah, to zoom it's
I
control scroll.
see.
Does it work?
Yeah, it works perfectly.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's what we have as a hotkey.
Let's see. The other thing I think is, oh, it has to do with decimals. That's the other thing as well. Is so
Ah, yeah.
I've noticed that basically Machinations is sort of like an interface over Google Sheets, correct?
It stores data in Google Sheets, yes, but it's actually using MX Graph as a
Mm,
component.
I see.
MX Graph as a drawing library. But I think we took the decision to use integers because with integers you can represent any game, any kind of economy in a clean way. You have, especially when you have resources flowing on, if you have zero point 0.2 resources, it's
Right.
kind of weird in terms of design also. But anything that you need to represent with floats, you just multiply with 100, for example, and you represent as integers then.
I see. Okay, that's something that I can definitely throw into my practice. But yeah, that could be another thing.
Plus, it is sort of an abstraction tool, so going down to the nitty-gritty that much won't probably do that much. But basically, what you're saying is that you would like to be able to use floating numbers, right?
Right. I have attempted to use floating numbers in some of my other projects, but just seeing like the long decimal, I believe that I can use the rounding tool because I think I have used it before, but it didn't actually seem to alter the numbers all that much. But I do get what you're saying that it's more like an
Ah,
abs like it's meant to just be for whole numbers because having a fraction of
yeah.
a resource probably isn't. Yeah.
Yeah, but I get it when you cannot use round that easily on integers. So
Yeah.
I understand. Yeah, of course. In that case, that's a fair point. True. True.
Mhm.
Maybe we should consider implementing some sort of way of rounding integer values to the next value, to the nearest neighbor. What? Just curious. What when you were in need of the rounding tool? What were you trying to do?
Would you mind if I screen share again?
Yeah, I know. I would not mind. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah. Um, so it didn't occur to me for this down here because this was sort of like I was working with decimals there, but what I actually was using it more importantly for was when we were developing Clockout, the fighting game that I had mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
I had designed for my team basically this sort of system where every every enemy would have like a body type and they would also have stats. They would have like a stat map out, and it would be like it would be procedurally distributed to each stat. But there were coefficients, and the coefficients were mostly decimals because we had like agility, which was measured like in seconds, and then we had stamina and health, which were measured in whole numbers. And so for that,
Mm.
I did for the enemy's exponential growth, and the exponential growth was based on that decimal of a coefficient. And so the numbers that I was seeing in here were different from the numbers that I was plugging in Excel or Google Sheets, if you would, because I put it in Google Sheets and then I was like, okay, let's see this happen in real time and the simulations and how would that look. Um, but yeah, that was what I used it for basically. And then if we go here, we
Uh-huh.
can see that the equation is this right here.
Mm-hmm.
That's all though.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now I'm starting to get curious about this diagram and will never end. This is very
Um,
interesting as well.
yeah.
Did you and for example with this diagram, did you make any design changes?
There were a lot actually. I think I have the earlier versions because I was sort of just like pumping it like super fast, and I didn't want to do it over and over again on the same diagram. And I think this was a much earlier version where we only had health, strength, and defense. Um, and so we were dealing with this equation instead, where I used the floor function. Um, and this was, I think, in this earlier version, we had decided that all stats would be whole numbers. And then over the course of like those last 2 months, we were like, okay, if we're gonna add these other two stats, then we need decimals. So I had to revise the system, and then it eventually became the final one that you saw over here, the player versus boss scaling.
Uh-huh. Did any of the formulas make it into the actual game?
These right here, these were the
Nice.
final formulas that made it into the game, but
Nice.
um, they echoed the kind of numbers that we were seeing in Google Sheets, because we were able to replicate that in C sharp.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Very good, Daniel. I'm very happy to have received such a bounty of awesomeness, of Machinations awesomeness. I feel very fortunate to have yeah, I'm very happy to have seen such a passionate guy that works with our tool, and you have done quite a lot, and your diagrams could look quite well designed, well arranged. So we're very happy to have you in our community, and to have you as a person that actually used our tool and transferred some of your skill into an actual game with your designs. That's very empowering, and I think everybody in the team will enjoy watching this video and knowing that we have people that do such awesome stuff, and the stuff actually gets into games.
Thank you. Yeah, this Machinations was definitely a lifesaver over the last year. Because now I have this tool with a number of it comes with it gives me a number of skills as well too, is that now I can actually see these systems in motion, and that's something that I've been lacking. And
Yeah.
um, but yeah,
Yeah,
this
I think many people have this kind of moment when they see machinations, and it was the same for me. And it's very useful when you have in your company a designer that can show their economical thinking. They can show that their design in a way that can be played. Oh, here's
Mhm.
what I'm thinking about. It's not just drawing stuff on a board and it's just like it stays there, or sheets or something like that. So I think it's quite useful, and we are growing the product a lot. It has developed quite extensively in the past just 6 months, not even mentioning a year. So we're coming out with some really nice features in the coming months. So I think that it's definitely going to be a thriving ecosystem. And I think with people like you showing up and showing people how they work with it, and I think it's inspiring and encouraging as well. And in the coming weeks, we're gonna also have some other people showing up and talking about designs. Also, you saw in our webinars we have Cesar and Matthew there, who are also they're the machinations gurus. They're very good at using the tool, way better than me. So I was mostly clunkering away in the API, so I don't know that I'm not so good at the diagram nitty gritty. So yeah. So it was again very nice talking to you. I'm happy that you came forward, and I'm looking forward to keep in touch. Please share the links with me,
Mhm.
and you can always hit me up on Discord. You can share them on Discord. Are you on any of our social channels?
Yeah, I'm actually in the Machinations Discord.
Okay, then you can share them. Then you can share them in Discord.
Okay,
Cool.
perfect.
And I think the video will make it somewhere. We'll make it on the website sometimes in September. I
Okay.
was talking with the guys in the weekly meeting this week. Cool.
Well, thank you for having me, Axon. It's a
I
pleasure.
wish I wish you I wish you a very good evening. Well, a good day. It's evening here,
Yeah.
so it's day there. I wish you a good day and then a good evening, and have a nice week as well.
Thank you. You too,
Cool.
Axon.
Thanks, man. Bye, Daniel. Bye.
Take care.